I'm just
upsets me that you
I'm
have
on
one
Moana right now. I think of them just again leaving
Like this
It's like I'm already naturally doing this.
Welcome to the Three Fates podcast. Hi, ladies.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm Deanne.
I'm Pam.
And I'm Meredith, and we are your hosts for this amazing podcast.
Woo.
Birth.
I'm Life.
And I'm Death.
You don't look like Death today.
No.
Death can be a celebration.
Sure.
Oh.
Those pants are definitely a celebration. I love them.
Thank you.
So
You
it's like
guys
the
are
black.
kind of, you're matching in a little bit of play of color.
Yeah, I can like almost.
I am not. I am the odd out.
You look like a placenta.
You do look like a placenta. Sorry,
I
that
will-
sounds really bad
Or a
for not
womb, or a
watching.
womb.
It's a beautiful dress.
It's such a beautiful dress.
I will
Deanne
take a
has the best
placenta.
clothes. Yeah.
I will take, you know what? With both my births of my daughters,
Mm-hmm.
I had my placenta imprinted. Like I got ink, it
Oh, you
got
did?
inked on it, and I got to get like a beautiful
didn't know
design
that-
to remember
I didn't
my
know that was a thing.
placentas. Yeah, if you get like, because I had my, let's go into it, my placenta encapsulated.
Okay, yeah.
And the same gal can create art with your placenta. So they put some food grade dye on your placenta. So you get it like after you're done, you tell them you want to save your placenta. And they put it in a cooler, and the lady would come pick it up. And then she does food grade dye, does the imprinting of the placenta, and then takes it and dehydrates and puts it in capsules.
Did it look like anything?
The tree, a tree of life. Like it
both
was
of them?
beautiful. Yeah.
Wow.
They said that they were quite big, the placentas. Like I had big
well done.
babies, so, you know, I had big placentas. The first one, I would say the first gal versus the second gal, the first gal that did it was beautiful. So
It'd be really cool to like see it now that your girls are a little bit older and you know the personalities to see if you can kind of see images.
Oh.
You know what I mean? Like a tea leaf reading.
Oh, I never even thought about that ever.
Well, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're not here
Anyways.
to talk about placentas today. We're here to talk about money, money, money.
Money. That was not planned. That was amazing.
Not Donald Trump style, but we're gonna like look at
So good.
the frequencies, the energies, the beliefs
around money.
Around money. It's a
Yeah.
hot topic, though.
It's a hot topic. It has been since money was invented. When was that? Does anybody know? Producer. Hey,
Producer.
Robin, check it out. Check it for
Google,
us.
Google Robin.
No, I'm pretty sure, actually, I know this one, although I'm sure there's some sort of precedent ahead of it, but I know that a lot of like money came in around like with Knights Templar and the idea of like safe passages for pilgrimage. For pilgrims, pardon me, when they were making pilgrims to the holy city, they would create like these tokens or something like that in exchange. Obviously, I think there's been precedent all over history for some sort of exchange thing, but I remember Googling it one time, and that's one of the stories that came up on our
interesting.
origins of like our modern money system and things like that. So yeah, it's pretty
So
cool.
it was used for safe passage, but now we just use it to buy things.
Well, I think like, yeah,
It's a safe passage.
I mean, it is interesting because I've been reading into money quite a bit because I have a lot of wounding around money, and a lot of my core wounds have circulate around money, and I'm shifting them. And it was interesting because money in itself, I think, is quite, it's when we've done this together as a group, we've tapped into just like the soul of money and the energy of money and all the different ways in which it's been used, and ultimately is energy. So how we use our energy, right? And how we experience energy. But with like our current system, it's really tied into scarcity and safety, which is a lot of actually like made up things that humans have done, because scarcity doesn't really exist in terms of like nature. There's always an evolution and a balancing in how like the planet has evolved. And that doesn't mean like animals don't starve or like there's not enough water, but there's like a higher divine kind of programming happening with that sort of evolution. And so the idea of scarcity triggers our like primal safety. And so then we all buy into this idea of scarcity as in there's not enough. But instead, what if like we started to delve into the invitation is like, what is enough for you, right? And what does enough mean? What does your life actually look like outside of the influence of how money has been displayed or we've grown up with, or how we believe and work with it. So it's a fascinating energy currently in our time and things like that.
Oh, and I just think too, what is coming to mind is how the ego can take over your money identity, right? And then that ego is just, if I'm not in control and I've got all this scarcity too around it, right? And how I look with money or what it can provide me that can showcase to the world my level of, you know, caliber or whatever, right? So yeah, I think in my past lives, and I know I've been unfolding it in this life, is I've had a lot of fear around scarcity and not having enough of money, like to the point where I remember being a little girl and going to the bank with my mom. And you know how they used to have like the bank slips where you would do all your deposits and you would have to write down. I was like, Mom, can I take some of those home so I can practice? Because I'm terrified that I'm not going to be able to pay for things. Like, how do you know how to like to pay your bills? Like it was almost like this fear that I wouldn't be able to support myself or pay for things because I wouldn't know how. It was so weird. And like, so why at 5 would I all of a sudden have that? And then I had many dreams of being homeless. Not necessarily in this life, but I would be like usually a male and I was homeless. So yeah, it's, have you guys had like fear, like that kind of level, like throughout your life of just like maybe remembering past lives with your relationship with money, or even just this life of scarcity?
For me, it's more like comes from my dad. My dad was like 3 years old when, like, before he was born and up till he was 3, they lived in India and they had farms, our farm. And I guess there was a lot of flooding for a few years. And so their crops weren't producing anything. And so they would have there was a few years that it was really, 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 really tight. And so I think my dad, because he was so young when that was all happening, only 3. And by the time 3, 4, it was fine. They were producing what they needed. But I think that's so ingrained in him that he always, even though we're fine, we have what we need, always had my whole life growing up. He always just feels like this, just like he's doesn't have enough and we got to like budget. And you have to like buy the cheap, wait for the sale, cut the coupons. Like, nope, we can't afford that. And I'm like, but we can. But it's just like, cause he was like so little when his family was in that fear. So I think that's what like my kind of feelings have come from, inherited through my dad, who was just so young. He doesn't remember any of that, but that's how he was. Like, he was born into a bit of fear. But then really after 3 years old, he was totally comfortable and has been, but it's still been this kind of thing where he's in his 70s and just learning a little bit how to let go and have some relaxation around it. But I do remember, so I remember like having to always like think that I thought we were poor, to be honest, as kids, but we weren't.
Because of the way it was portrayed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We always had like a nice place to live and how the things we needed, but just because how his fear was always so present that I just thought maybe we didn't have enough money. But I do also remember being like at the Bay with my mom one time and she was writing a check to pay for something like back in the 80s. And I remember like she just wrote a number down. So I thought that's like, oh, that's easy. You just take that piece of paper and write a number down. And you can get whatever you want. Like you just like it's just this paper and you can put whatever you want.
You just have to
on
learn
it.
to write.
Yeah. And so I remember mom going like, Mom, can I have this thing? She goes, no, we can't afford that. I'm like, but write a check.
Just write it down.
Just write a check. She's like, that's not how that works. And I was like, what do you mean?
Worst.
I'm actually really cautious with my girls when we're out, and say it's like just not in my vision to buy that big ticket item that they want or something, or this. I'm very careful to say we can't afford it. I never say that. I just say, oh, it's not time right now, or that's not our priority. Maybe something else is. I make sure that they understand that there's value in the things. Like, we should be really grateful that we can do this type of vacation right now. That we can, like mommy and daddy also work hard to allow us to have this vacation. But I try not to say we can't afford it. Nope. It's like, no, we can't afford groceries, or we can't, and I mean, we're lucky in a sense that there is some comfortability there where I wouldn't have to say that often, but it's not like I'm running out and buying like kayaks and, this pool and that, and, all of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's not that we couldn't. If I really wanted to manifest that, I know we could. So I don't look at it as like, I don't have the money or we can't afford it. It's just not my priority.
More of a values-based
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? This isn't where my value is.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Anyways, what's your story, Mare?
I think that it gets quite foggy for me, and so it's still something I'm working through. But most of the time when I tap into like money stories in terms of like past lives, I hear a lot of like, you're a rich bitch. Yeah. Like, so I feel like I've had lifetimes of quite a bit of abundance, and like that always feels good and like luxury. And so I don't feel like I personally have, like, from my soul story, a block there in some sense. Like there's some things in this lifetime that I'm working through, but I see it as like how I'm working with the energies that are present today, right, in society. And like it's interesting because I know what it's like to be in a lot of debt, and I know what it's like to like make good money and then feel like watch it go away and all these sort of things. So I'm starting to step back and work with that a bit more. But in terms of like ancestral stuff, like Irish lineage, and anytime it comes through, there's the very idea of like piss poor, like you know, like immigrant farmers, or like even in that idea of like just having very, very like low financial resources on that side. So that's always interesting as an energy that comes up sometimes. And I've worked with that in the sense of valuing hard work. I come from a like, in terms of values, like my family are workers, like they love to work. I'm like the one that doesn't work as hard in the family, and I work like a ridiculous amount. So it's really interesting to see that. And in terms of like this family dynamic, my dad very much was like, he was very generous with money and like would want to take care of, like he would be the one that like bought my first Jeep for me, or like would like kind of like take care of me like in that sort of financial thing. And mom is the complete opposite, where she's like, it's my Scottish like frugality. And so it's very much like she shows like, because love and money go hand in hand in our society in a lot of it. So understanding the relationship between money is also understanding relationship with love in our family dynamic type things. And so hers is very much like, no, you're gonna figure it out, and I'm going to teach you by not giving you anything or giving you the bare minimum, or if I lend you money, I'm going to charge you interest on it, or like, because you have to learn kind of thing. And so it's very opposite. So I grew up in a very like contrasting way with money. And then they kind of talked about it. Both my parents didn't have anything when they started as a couple, so they built a lot together through hard work. So there's like a deep tie into that as well. Yeah, it's super interesting. I just saw a heron fly in front of the window. It's pretty cool.
Well, and I know like some souls can come in with vows of poverty. Or do you guys ever work with clients like that have that energy?
I haven't. No, not like
I've
a
seen
vow
it a
of
little
poverty.
bit. My husband,
Sounds like nuns.
yeah, a little
Like
bit.
the
My husband's had
Catholic.
a little bit of that. Plus, he was born into a family that would repeatedly say that money is the root of all evil.
There's so many beliefs
I've
around
seen.
money.
Yes,
It's
I've worked
like-
with that for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
And like what are some of the beliefs that like you've heard, like money doesn't grow on trees,
money doesn't go. Money's the root of all evil.
money's the root
yeah.
of all evil. It's, what is it, easier to pass the needle?
A healer shouldn't charge.
A healer should charge.
Shouldn't.
Oh,
Shouldn't
shouldn't charge. Oof.
Yeah.
True
I'll
healers
still have
don't-
people go like,
True healers don't charge.
yeah, true healers don't. Yeah.
So why do healers charge?
Work
Let's
hard,
let's
play
pack
hard.
on that.
You
Let's
know, that you
unpack-
have to really work hard in order to earn your play hard.
That's just so you can drive your 4x4s.
Yeah.
Healers shouldn't charge, because I know we talked a little bit
Yeah.
earlier about what it's like to work in business and also offer services like we do. And I know a lot of it, there's a lot of toxic beliefs in the community that I've bumped into or I believe that they're toxic, and this is my personal belief, so I don't want to, nobody yell at the other two, this is me, in the sense of we attach like value-based belief judgment on if you can't afford it, it's because you don't want it like hard enough and charge like massive ticket items, or as someone when you're creating your pricing, if you don't charge enough, it's because you're too scared of like making money, or you're too like it puts the onus on you, rather than understanding it's like a relationship that you get to navigate. It's not like it doesn't mean anything about you per se. right? In the sense of like a good person or a bad person. We're like inviting judgment on it instead of just allowing it to be an exploration in a curiosity of how you're navigating with this energy. Because money itself, I believe, is neutral.
Oh yeah, I think it's neutral for sure. I've had lots of experiences doing constellations around the energy of money, and it's just like, I'm quite neutral. I'll be anything you want me to be. And if you're in a good relationship with me, I'll follow suit. But if we have a belief already of what money is, and we put a face on money, and we think it's a certain thing, then it's going to be that face for us. But it's up to you to decide what kind of relationship you want with money. It is very neutral. So just strip it from, like, if you just imagine money in front of you, if you see it a certain way, just strip away those masks, strip away the belief systems, the labels, see it as a very neutral energy, and then start from scratch. Like, how do I want to build a brand new relationship with this like thing called money? You know?
I love the most whenever that invitation is put forward, because for me, scarcity, immediately my energy is like just, I feel like panicked. There'll never be enough, right? Another belief from money, there'll never be enough to be taken care of or to be safe or blah, blah, blah. But and that never feels like true to me. It doesn't feel like how I want to work with money. How I want to work with money is understanding that it's a tool of exchange so that I can create. And I love creating. And so being able to create in particular spaces, right? So if I'm free to create spaces, and by that I mean like farm, working on a dome, even just like a breathwork space where you can come and energetically feel a certain way. Like I know that if I'm taken care of and there's been this exchange, understanding that I've put all this work in on this side and your exchange may be financial or other, right? It's not always financial for me. I do some other kinds of exchange. Then you're helping support that vision of creativity and helping build what I'm trying, or what my heart wants to build. And one of the ways through which that is possible is through the energy of money.
Totally. I've noticed, like, if I go, okay, well, so-and-so's coming in, and like, if I've done for sure some sessions and things with not charging, right? And I'm like, and then if I do that enough and it gets to a point that my system gets really bitter. And so I'm like, oh man, because it's not enough energy exchange. I'm not getting fed at all. And I think there's like this thing like, okay, well, she's not giving me a product. Like, I'm not getting like something from her that I can hold in my hand, but it's just like understanding, no, how much energy it takes I think for me, I know for both of you, to like hold space, to be channeling in, tuned in, and how much investment I've even put into being able to be that person. Like, you know, countless amounts of courses and countless amount of actual money that I've spent to refine my education, to become, you know, who I am. And there's so the exchange, I'm really trying to figure that out and feeling into like, how much more can I even show up in like the authentic version of myself when there is some sort of exchange, not just money either, but enough of appropriate exchange that there is like a reciprocity that's happening. And so when there's only a one-way feed, and it's just energy becomes stagnant because you're not actually flowing anything back towards yourself. And I know I studied my human design, so I know, I don't know for every design, I'm sure everybody has something of this, but I know for projectors, if you don't like actually receive some sort of energy exchange for your service, you get really depleted, like deeply depleted. And then I'm like, whoa, I can't give to the next people because this one just depleted me because I didn't have enough energy exchange. And then so for the highest aspect of service, for me, it's like I need some sort of reciprocal exchange for me to like not feel like I'm gotta like sleep for 3 days afterwards.
I think even as you're talking, what's coming through too is that it's not always about, like when you're talking about reciprocity, and it's not the value in terms of dollar amount sometimes that you attach onto it, because you can have an hour session that you charge 9 times as much, and it would be like there's not enough money in the world for the amount of energy that this like session took, or that this client, like not client, but like that this thing in front of me is taking from me. It feels so extractive. I felt, and I just think about that in terms of like nursing for me, got to the point, and this was very much the universe telling me like 12-hour night shifts all the time, like even 12-hour shifts. I used to do them all the time, no problem, right? Like full-time plus, literally thousands and thousands of patients, thousands of hours. And it wasn't necessarily always the patient, but at some point now, if I go back and I just do like one 12-hour shift, I'm wiped out. And I can make more money nursing than I can currently, or what I currently charge in breath work. And so from a rational standpoint, it doesn't make sense to be like, just keep feeding into breath work or like keep doing that. And because the energy it takes when I'm with a breathwork session, you can't do 12 hours of breathwork straight, right? Like it takes, like I could probably do maybe 3 a day at most, just in terms of how I like to curate it and what it takes in that space. And so it makes more financial sense to just go keep nursing. I get my pension, I get benefits, I get all of these things that, speak to security. And yet energetically, it drains me so much that like I start to gain weight, I don't sleep. Like my blood pressure goes through the roof and I don't feel like myself, like I can't interact with anything for sometimes 2 or 3 or 4 days after. And the last few times when I've tried to go back and do like those longer shifts, short shifts, no problem, right? Like 8 hours, and depending where I am, I can give that way. And I still work in the hospital environment, but my role has changed and the energy has changed in that. But it got to that point where like even, a double day or like not enough. The exchange wasn't okay because the energy.
No
was
matter
off.
how much money you
It doesn't
made.
matter how much money.
not that,
Like at some point,
Sacrifice.
don't get me wrong. I would drag my ass in for.
There's a certain number.
You're like there's a number. I can be bought
Double time.
for sure. Time and a half. Triple time. I'm
Give me
there.
the big leap. You're going to say, no, I can't be bought.
Yeah. I'll be like, you know what? I'll just take a portion of that for like some counseling.
Exactly. Like, Meredith, what are you doing?
Only a month of sessions after.
So that'll be that.
Yeah.
But it's just speaking to that energy exchange, right? With like, it's not, money is one of the agreed upon ways in which we exchange, but it isn't always like matching in terms of like, it's always not that concrete number every single time. And I find that some people I come in and I'm like, I don't charge financially because it doesn't feel right. There's some other different kind of exchange that feels really good. And that's always a conversation in flux and flow, right? And sometimes it does shift into not feeling good anymore. And then we like renegotiate the terms or something like that. But it's also understanding that I'm really working personally on seeing the value-based stuff. So values, how do we operate from a place of value? Like, and what you value versus what you value, which Robin values are all going to be different based upon our life and based upon what we want. And being able to align money with your values changes your relationship with it totally, right? And understanding that I value different things in different ways. So sometimes it will be just a pure financial exchange, and other times it will be more what this person brings in terms of skills or just their energy. You just feel like uplifted around that, and you understand that there has been an exchange.
Well, and it's what I've been thinking as you guys have been talking is that we're so accepting, or most of society is still only accepting of the material exchange. So I saw you actually put a needle in my arm, Meredith, and at nursing, and therefore thank you for that exchange. And then I'm going to, pay for your service to do that. Or I've gone to the clothing store and actually bought. Whereas with what we do with energetics, you feel it, you reap the rewards in so many different levels. But I mean, I could see it, but or I feel it, but it's like it's not that same. Quote unquote, like materialized thing for a lot of people. And so I think in this work of spirituality and healing is that I think some people have a hard time understanding the charge or the money associated with it, the payment of it, right? You know what I mean? Because it's like sometimes you might just be laying your hands on the person and there's silence even. So it's not even like some aspect of what the person might perceive as counseling or counsel of some sort. And it's like, how do you, people can't perceive that as worth money.
Yeah.
So I think that whole term of, healers shouldn't be paid is because we're so used to getting some immediate gratification of something for what our money was caused. And there is in healing, if you allow it, and it can be in that minute. It can also unfold for days, weeks, months, years afterwards. Yeah. So it's like, it's still, I think there's opening or a receivership of that still I think is working, because I know that if I go and start to talk a little bit about what I do, I'm not a classic job or career of making money. And it's like sometimes I'm having to stand there and feeling a sense of I have to be like, I'm sustainable. Like I make a decent living, or I make a fair living for me, and I get to control that based on how I feel with my money exchange and all the things. And people are just like, oh, that's really cute. That's cool. But you're not like, because I don't work for the government or, in medical care or something of that, I am perceived actually as less than in my career too, based on that kind of money, which that could be my own perception, but I do feel that there's still a stigma around that in our industry of healers. And so it's like, even I sometimes stumble. I don't want to be like, I'm a healer, psychic medium, I talk to spirit babies. I'm like, oh, I'm a holistic practitioner, because that sounds like it's something more that people could understand that you could make money at.
Which is funny though, because what is a holistic practitioner? It's just
Fucking
like
I know, right?
some
It's just
sort of
like, I just put the term on, and then I'm like, and I'm kind of trained under Body Talk Association. And then I'm
what's
like,
Body Talk?
But then I'm also like a medium, so I talk to your babies prior to conception, and they're like, oh. It's like by the time I get to my elevator speech, I'm like somewhere different than holistic practitioner. But it's like, it's still this like weird, part of like people just thinking that you're just out there having fun with it, and like, oh, that you must be so lucky you can dabble in that and you don't need to make a living, things like that. So anyways,
it's like that belief
that's
too,
interesting.
right? Make a living. You
Yeah.
can't make a living doing that. Is
Yeah.
another belief. Money
Or you
belief,
can't make
right?
people like you can't make a living doing things that you really enjoy
Or that you love. Yeah.
That you love. How can you make a?
Can you unpack that one? I feel like there's a charge with that for you, or just something that you.
Oh,
wanna
I just think, I've always only done what I love. My entire life. I started working when I was 14.
You might be picking that up on mine.
Yeah, but I think I
She's
get
got
more
some wisdom
No,
here. I know what I'm picking up on, Dee, so I'm just going to give her a moment to come back down.
I think I
I gotta
get
come back into my placenta, guys.
Go be birthed.
I need to go be rebirthed again.
Oh my gosh, I think I could just get charged on people who don't think they can. Like it just,
Life,
I'm like,
yeah.
what? What do you mean you think you just have to do that job forever? I don't understand.
Life is appalled.
Life
Life is appalled. Life is like, do your fucking thing. Yeah.
And I also understand that like once you go down the spiritual path and open your heart up and do all the things, you can do the exact same job you always were, but it's a very different experience.
Yeah.
Like same thing, but you're having like doing it, before or after an awakening, right? Or a heart opening. So not saying that, it's just like the idea of it. It's more like not so much what you're doing. It's like the drudgery, like, oh, I'm gotta get up for Monday work, like the Monday blues.
Living the dream.
Living
Okay.
the dream.
Oh, God.
Can I
hate that.
ask?
Yeah.
Dee
You
is
guys,
fired up.
I'm
For
fired up
those
with
listening.
this.
She
Can
is
we offer
fired.
our listeners and viewers some hot tips on how do you switch into something you love, though? Like, because I can hear, I'm in the audience right now because I've been there, where I'm like, I'm gonna do healing work one day, but it won't make me money, and I need to do a 9 to 5. I've been there. So what would you guys say to our listener and viewers of how to make the jump into something that somebody's dreaming of wanting to do and living and doing that, and they're maybe stuck in the drudgery of, oh, this is so exhausting, my job, my life, like I need to make the switch, but how do I do it? How do I go there? Because I'm just in scarcity that I can't survive in the switch.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think before you just jump from like quitting your job and running off to some other job, whatever that dream job is, like it's not about that. It's about your insides first.
Yep.
If you can't, it's just switching your job. If you're in a place of not being in good relationship with yourself or the world, switching your job's not going to do anything.
Yep.
Even if it's like maybe in your mind your dream job. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? So it's like, how do you be happy first? And that's a big question. That's like a lot of work there. But it's so then basically, because when you do transition into a job that's more aligned with your passion, you're gonna be able to sustain it. Mm-hmm. And so it's not going to be like, oh, well, I got almost like get more, get grounded, get secure, find joy, do the things to like decondition yourself from, so the matrices that you don't want to be a part of, and like do that work while you're in your current experience. Allow to like basically unbox and reveal yourself more to yourself, get to know you. And then through that work, I think it's like how Meredith is doing it really. Like she's been doing it in a way that she's still She's slowly kind of coming out of something that wasn't bringing her full joy, but she's still kind of there. She's unraveling. She's working on herself. She's feeling secure. She's opening up into like a new expression. And I think that if you just like are really kind of feeling the Monday blues and you're in this box and you're tight and you're constricted and you're not flowing and you're in stagnation, and then you take that same energy into this job that you think is going to like totally fulfill you, but you haven't done any of the work to kind of expand and soften a little bit, you might like subconsciously sabotage yourself.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing too is that the scarcity isn't necessarily always related to the money, right? So to heal, like, because there could be fear about making that jump and leap of how to survive financially and money wise. But I would encourage people to sit with that. Maybe the scarcity doesn't come exactly from money. Like maybe it's something else. If we heal that deep scarcity, the transition can welcome.
Love.
Yeah.
Love and money.
Yep.
Love and money.
And
Which is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Find that fulfillment, that deep love, or the place within self.
Because it's like saying that that same thing. Like it's not really about the job. It's about how are you perceiving life. Like, are you like in a place where you can value any service you're in, whatever job you're in, whatever you're doing as part of society. Can you like reframe that for yourself of like how that is needed for the world and like your role in that, and start to refine your expression, your vibration as you are executing that job, and just change your perspective. And then from there things will blossom and grow. But I've seen so many people who just can reframe that idea. Like there's that one book, I can't remember what it's called, but there is like this idea of chop wood, carry water before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water after enlightenment. So you're the person in the village and your job is to chop wood and carry water. And they're like, that's what you do. And you're like, oh man, I hate chopping wood and carrying water. This sucks. Like I get pushed away in the forest, and I gotta do it by myself, and I gotta carry these heavy pails all the way uphill back to the village, and this is just like the worst job ever. And then you have some sort of love come through your system, your heart open up, so you understand how important that job is. You're like, I'm bringing water to my community. I'm bringing like this like life energy, and I'm going to like hold, as I'm carrying the buckets up of water, I'm going to structurize it. I'm going to love it. I'm going to like energize it with like life force. So when they drink it, they're drinking love. I'm chopping wood for my village. Holy smokes. I'm going to bring fire and fire of transformation. And we're going to cook our food over this. I'm going to be able to help transformation with the wood that I bring. So it's the same job, but your expression of it is totally different. And your idea of what you're doing is totally different, and how you're servicing versus this like, I hate this job versus, wow, I have, this job is everything for helping to sustain this village. I've got a friend who was a plumber. He was kind of in this transition as well. He was a plumber for many, many years. Now he's a life coach and relationship expert. But while he was transitioning from now just being full-time life coach and relationship expert, in his plumbing business, he was like, okay, how can I show up in my plumbing business as this like heart-centered person? So he actually called it like crystalline plumbing or something. I can't remember exactly what his business name was. And he's like, I get to put water in people's homes. I get to pipe water in people's homes. He's like, so basically as he's piping and as he's doing the plumbing work, he's imagining that all the water coming through the pipes become crystalline. That he's infusing these pipes with like this like powerful energy that everything coming through those charged pipes are entering into this family's home. So they're showering with his blessed water, and they're drinking this, and it completely changes the vibration of the literally life force water element in that person's home. So as he was transitioning, and he did end up leaving his plumbing business, but he was in this kind of transition of seeing his service in a profound way as well.
Yeah. I would say, I remember before I started my collective healing business, I was working a 9 to 5, just filling my time essentially. And it was that I was like, oh, this is so hard. This sucks. And it was almost like then in my days, everything would go wrong. Right. It was like a light bulb went off probably like 4 years in. So halfway into that place. And I suddenly was like in gratitude. I was like, thank you, job. I've been able to pay rent somewhere else to open up my studio. I've been able to pay for all these courses with this job that I've gotten. I've been able to help my family buy a home with this job. And it was also all this gratitude for the job that I had. And I was able to move into a different position there and make more money and, just all these things because of it. And at the same time, I was planning my exit. So I was in deep gratitude for what it gave me, which really softened my experience to be there and helped me to find joy essentially there as I could work on all my stuff and gain my self-worth and all those things to move into my next career and my so-called, dream and things like that. But I think those listening, I think that's really helpful as you're waiting to transition or as you're, making your exit strategy is to find some element of the enlightenment or joy or gratitude in what you do have to just settle your nervous system, your energy while you still feel like you have to be there to make an ends meet or to support yourself in transition. I think that's great advice.
It's like if you're learning how to be like a heart-centered person, if you can do it in the place that you so-called hated the most.
Yeah.
Then it's like, whoa, that's a mastery, I think. Like that's profound. I think if we don't like run from the places that make us uncomfortable, but we try to transform ourselves to have a different experience in those same places. I think it's a pretty cool experience. What do you think, Mare?
Yeah.
Totally opposite.
I love
Bring
that.
it in,
Just
Mare.
kidding.
Bring in
I
that
love
death.
it.
Bring it in.
I love it.
Not totally opposite, but just like things to speak to, because you're right. Like I have been going through that intensely over the last little while, and agree with Pam 100%. Like, how can you transform your experience that you're having? How can you transform yourself to change up? Because that is like, I think an ultimate, like your outside reflects your inside, right? So can you do the work, I think is what you're talking about too, to like start to change and then watch your outside experience transform as you do that. And like totally resonate with what Dee shared too about how do we flip it into like, oh, this job is actually allowing me to do all these things. And I feel that way about nursing very much. Like, and I love nursing. I just need to say that right now. And I'm very good at it. And I love it. The human body fascinates me. My experiences have been amazing. And so a lot of like shifting out of that has been, how do I love this? Right. And how like I've been able to sit with people in their darkest moments, like, and bring in grace and compassion and comfort and presence. And so that's like a true gift that I don't think I will ever not be grateful for. And then at the same time, and I think this is when death is coming through and how death has really guided me through a lot of it, was there comes a moment when you realize, and I work I think the healthcare system in general is it's full of really amazing, wonderful, well-intentioned people and some really cool like ideas, and it's in its own transition period. But historically, how this system is built is on chewing up healthcare providers and leaving them with absolutely nothing. And so recognizing what sort of environment that you're in, like at some point I realized like they really play on martyrdom. They really play on a lot of your feelings of like, well, if you leave or if you don't do it, this person's going to suffer. Lots of guilt and shame get weaponized in that kind of environment. And at some point you have to, and it's like, not like, it's not real. It's in front of you. You're literally watching suffering in front of you. And you really literally can watch how like your presence can make either a positive impact or not. And so you're really taught to like not consider yourself. And so being in that environment all the time, day in and day out, at some point you can do all the inner work. And I had a mentor reflect this to me one time when I was actually on making one of my big like choices to end something and step into a different iteration, was like, at what point is your ego going to tell you that you're bigger than the fear that surrounds you all the time, than the size of this machine that you're a part of, right? Like, because it'd be like, I can change, I can make the difference. And at some point that becomes a weight and a responsibility, and it hits its tipping point where like, can you sit in the gratitude? Can you sit in the love? But then also recognize what kind of environment you're in, that like, maybe you do want to sit and work on changing it and work on policies and all of that. And God bless you if you do. It's certainly not me. I I could not work in that environment anymore and not be consumed by the fear. And that started showing up in like the physical fatigue and like feeling drained and starting to get the kind of patients I got were more and more and more intense. And so they took more and more and more from me. And it was that way of listening. And that was death coming to say, it's time to end this. Like, we can make this really, really hard for you if that's how you're going to respond. Because that's one of the ways that I listen to things, is if it gets really excruciatingly hard, then I'll finally listen. Historically, right now I'm shifting to be much more flow, but recognizing that point in yourself where you've like done the work and it was no longer, that environment didn't have more for me to learn, and it was time to shift out of that. But to also be super clear, like, that extraction has been extremely slow. Like, I didn't just like quit and and leave. And I think that sometimes we see that story glamorized a lot of, and that is a wild journey. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm certainly not going to tell you that, but I don't think it's the only way that you can start to do it. Because I worked for BC Transplant with organ donation for a while, which is a whole other amazing opportunity that I really liked. But at some point it was too many hours for allowing me to continue my own work. And then I've just slowly been trickling in this breath work over the last 3 or 4 years. And I think also I'd love to speak to one of the things that I felt really damaging for myself in my own spiritual journey, and making that transition from someone who was beginning to experience like the spiritual community or the spiritual world. And I will preface this with, I was in deep grief, and also it was COVID. So this is just my story and my experience. Immediately I had a couple of really beautiful experiences. And one of the first things that was told to me was, how can you capitalize on this? How can you turn this into a business? How can you turn this into a job? Like, you're going to be like, you love breath work, you should offer it. You should charge for it. You should be. And so immediately I didn't have that opportunity to just be with what it felt like to just be held or to breathe. And I don't think that's an accident. I have deep peace with that because I've learned so much. But I would just encourage, like, if you have like a really beautiful experience or intense experience, like, get curious if your first thing is like, and now I'm going to do this. And it doesn't mean that you won't, but it just, if you release the timeline on it and just let yourself experience what's there today, I feel like that will allow for a much like more present integrative journey than if you were to just like jump off the cliff. And I mean, again, if that's like that, sometimes that's going to be your story and that's where your lessons are and that's what your life is meant to be. But I just wanted to be like, it's not the only way. And one of like the beautiful metaphors that I've been using for it is, if you want to get like the weeds out of the garden, you just plant flowers, right? And you start to crowd out the weeds. You don't necessarily have to go in and rip out all the weeds and try to plant everything all at once and start. Instead, you can just slowly pulling out and working out these things that you don't like anymore, and you plant in things that you do love. And you just allow your life to like slowly shift in that way. And then it can translate into a business, and it can translate into meeting like some most amazing people that you're not doing a podcast with, right? Or whatever. And so I just feel like if your job is in a place where it's depleting you so much, get curious about, is there certain aspects of that job that you can shift? Can you start to show up differently in it, just as like Pam and Dee were both talking about it? And then also recognizing at some point, if it doesn't get lighter and you just keep getting heavier and heavier and heavier, there's maybe an opportunity, that's your sign from death, to be like, it's time to shift this, like to take this through a death cycle. There's something better out there for you. And you will be supported and loved in that. But that doesn't mean you won't go through financial, like you might not have the finances coming in that you're used to, and that can be really scary. So you might have to navigate what it feels like to not have so much in the bank account for a little while, or you, I'm not advocating for you to be reckless with that or to underestimate how much of a journey that can be in this society.
Yeah. And that's why I was thinking, like, some of that prep work from my mind was like so important, because I'm like, it is going to be if you just kind of drop your job and then you have a bit of a gap in finances, or you're not making as much, or whatever that transition time is going to take to like rebuild yourself, you have to be like in a place of trust with that, and feeling safety still, and having like a grounded root chakra enough that you still feel empowered in your choice and not like constricted, and then having a fear, be overwhelmed by the fear of that. So I think that's where some of that, like the preemptive work is really important, so that when you do dive in that place of transition, that you're like, it's okay. I'm on a raft. I'm protected. It's uncomfortable. But I'm okay.
I feel like you just went through that, and I don't want to
Yeah.
like in terms of like making a shift to seeing yourself as someone who was like predominantly an RMT,
Yeah.
right? Like an understood title, and stepping more into your like quantum healing like role and way of being. And I think as a friend, I got to witness you go through all like a lot of ups and downs in that transition too, right? And even that was with someone who's had 15 years experience with that, right? It's life be life in
Life
that
be
sense.
life in, for sure.
And the contemplation period.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right?
because I think
The
it was
transition
time
can
before
take
you-
a while. Like it's not just a rip of the band. It doesn't have to be.
No, and it's like, and so it's that slow kind of transition, because it's I've been doing body talk for 10 years.
Yeah.
I've been an RMT for nearly 20, and it took me like, so it was like 10 years basically to actually transition out of being RMT. Once I started body talk, I just dropped my license like 5 months ago.
Yeah.
And so it took me years to kind of slowly build, get that confidence, have enough safety in my root chakra, and enough of like guidance with my spirit guide that says, okay, you've done enough work on the preparation now. And I got that message last year, like in August. It was like, okay, you're not renewing this year. And I was like, oh, it's here. But I had to, like, I'm very patient with that timing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to renew one more year. I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm going to still do like this half and half job for a while. And then when I hear my spirit guides just say now, and I go, oh, okay, blind trust. And so of course, the beginning of this year, I've been in like that place of like trust, totally seeing my practice flip around. A brand new client base now in the past 5 months, and things that I've done for years now kind of falling away, new things being birthed. So I'm in a deep place of trust right now. And I'm no longer holding on to the other shore at all. Like I've completely let go, and I'm still kind of forming my next island. So yeah, I'm in that place that that you were talking about, like very, very actively right now. And yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey to get here.
I also love it when people have like everyday experiences with like regular jobs, and I'm using the quotations, and they also get to be, right?
Yeah.
When I'm like your story of like plumber and like relationship expert, like I can't imagine
I know.
like
It's
the
so
guy
random.
coming to do like plumber to also be like, well, how are you showing up in authenticity? And yet I love that.
How's
And
your
so-
love life?
really, right though, or like it's like that, I consider that everyday magic of like you just never know who you're going to meet, and don't let like these, and this is my freedom piece coming in, but don't let these like roles or these things that you do define who you are, right? You can be both. You can be working at a grocery store and love the fact, like I spent one summer working at a butcher shop, and it was like the most random thing. I was just navigating a lot of both of my parents had just had cancer. And so I'd quit and come back home and like looked after them while they were both sick at the same time. And I just needed something so simple. And I just wandered into a butcher shop. It paid garbage. I had the best summer. It was so fucking easy to just be like, yeah, you want like chops, or you want like the bone in? Like it was what I needed. And I got to interact with people and feel what it was like to have like just like simple, and it didn't take away from who I was. Like I got to learn something. And so understanding that wherever you are, like you may not like look like what does a spiritual person look like? Again, quotations, right? Like what does it mean to have a spiritual life, or to hold space, or to be a healer? Don't let it be limited by what the outside world might tell you, right? Like you can be them both. Like I switch roles all the time. Like you'll find me in dirty coveralls out like pretending like pounding posts and like learning how to farm, or like all cleaned up, or at the nurse in my scrubs. Like I love that these different aspects all get to coexist together, and they find their own little balance. So I don't think that any one of the roles that I play is more than or less than the other. And that is like a nice place to be, to start to like actually work with energy. Yeah. And obviously I'm feeling the transition to more like space holding and more breath work and more of the energy piece, but I'm allowing that to be organic now, because I don't want it to be how I first experienced it, where I felt so much pressure to be like, okay, you're smart, you're going to take the course, and then you're going to offer it, and then you got to build your business around it. And then if you don't have like clients, or you can't quit nursing tomorrow, then you're a failure and you suck at it. I felt so much of that. Like, oh, if you're not financially viable within 6 months, then, it's like this beautiful balance between wanting to manifest or dreaming or like picturing what your life might look like. but also recognizing for me, and I know I'm talking a lot, but recognizing how much of it was trying to escape a life that I didn't want anymore versus how much of it is like a life I'm intentionally creating. And stepping away from something that isn't working it's a whole journey in itself, as well as creating a life that actually, and understanding that you're different. Like every time you go through it, you're different. So what you want and what it looks like will probably change as well.
Oh, totally. I think there's like an energy of like us being like role models too, right?
Oh yeah.
For in the sense of like, I was going to share this from my story last night. I was with some extended family last night, and one of my members of my family, he's a doctor, pediatrician, and he was like, for the first time, kind of really talked to me about like what I do, you know, like in the quantum healing realm. And he was just like, tell me about your business model. I don't really get it. And I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, how did you transition from like being an RMT in the past 5 months? You're not. And like, what's your business model around this? I'm like, don't people just also want to have quantum healing? I don't know. Right. And he was just kind of like, how do you speak about it? I don't understand how you've had this title for so long and it's a trusted title and exactly this, like, how are you, like taking care of yourself financially now and being able to like promote yourself in this place that's so ambiguous and so hard to explain and so non-researched that you can sound like a credible person without having your title anymore. Like, how are you doing this?
What up, colonialism?
Right? And I'm
Have
like,
you legitimize yourself?
and not gonna lie, like I think my early years of being RMT, I remember thinking about like, oh, I'm so glad I have this title. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, look at those like healers out there who do it without regulations. But you know
Which
what?
is valid in some ways, but also.
But yeah, I remember just really having that, and now I'm one of those people.
With a deep,
Welcome to the
deep
club. Welcome to
background.
the club.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, this is different. And we had this really enlightening conversation that I didn't expect to happen. And you know, by the end of my conversation with him and how I'm like heart-centered in my business and why I've chosen to have this transition for myself, like, you know, he was teary-eyed by the end and seeing how proud of me he was and how him as a medical doctor, he is changing his practice on how he's communicating with his clients and more heart-centered, more consciousness-centered, not giving just a pill, but giving like lifestyle advice and like, oh, change this in the way you communicate in your family. Maybe this will change. Like kind of, you know, just actually things of energy and heart and emotion. So that was so cool for me to witness last night and have this big conversation that I you know, it's not often that your family will ask you like, hey, tell me about these things. And so it was really, really cool moment for me. And then by the end, he was just like, man, I see your beauty, not like your face, but your heart. Aww. And I was like, oh,
weeping.
And just how proud he was. And also kind of like, how do you continue to change the world? Like how there's so many people are disconnected from the land and from food and from these places. And they just want their screens and their VRs and all the things. So he's like, how do you go about this? Like, it's a pretty big job that you're undertaking. And I'm like, one person at a time. I don't know what to say. Like it's my path. It's my heart path to be on this journey. And I don't know how I'm going to, you know, change billions of people, but I can start with a few.
Yeah.
you know, to be that role model. And I think that's what we're all here for. You know? Yeah.
Thanks
so
for
sweet.
sharing.
That is so sweet.
So sweet.
Also, I do love money. I just want to say that.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
that.
I love it when we are conjuring business. Like
Yeah.
we go for our business meetings and we're the three people sitting in a coffee shop doing a constellation to clear our money karma or to create foundations for our practice. And my husband was like, when we just started to do the podcast, he's like, okay, what's the projection? How are you going to make the money? You know, he wanted to like left brain everything. And I was like, I don't know. I don't know. And then, because in my head, I'm like, I don't do that anymore. Like I don't approach it left brain. I'm like, what's the alignment? What's the hell yes? And then work with the energy around it. So then like 5 minutes later, he comes up. He's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I know you do business a different way than I do business. He's like, just do your thing. I think this is so good. This is gonna be so good for you. Just follow your heart and do that. And I love that there was like that moment where it just like he, you know, came in alignment with it. But then seeing how we continue to run our business is so inspiring for me in my own practice. But just I love sitting and looking at the energy of how our business is run. And sure, there's some logistics things like we got to sign up for Instagram and we got to do all these things and the left brain stuff. But the backbone, the meat to the podcast is all energy.
Yeah, we've done months of just like energetic foundational work before we started. And even in the aspect of like, where is this taking us? Like, we don't really know. We're following our heart. We don't know where this is going to take us. We don't know what's going to become of this. If it's going to be a passion project, if we're getting abundance through just energy received in a different way, or if it's going to be monetary, we don't know. We're kind of in the place of deep surrender and trust and curiosity. Yeah. And we do money constellations instead of financial planner.
Yeah. Or like pushing something to make money, you know, because I think that's the thing too. You think logistically, let's do it this way so we can make money this way, but that doesn't always equal. Like that in energy, the exchange might not be there. So if we can create an opening and make sure we're all in a healthy, balanced position towards money or towards podcasts, and we're just allowing the money, if it's there, like you said, that because abundance doesn't always mean money. It could be abundance in a different aspect or way. So whatever that abundance is for us, it's welcome to come in this way, or this way.
I think that's a great thing to say. Like abundance is so many more things than just
money.
like money in your pocket. There's so many ways to contemplate, is my life rich or not? Where can I find more richness in my life? And let's not talk about how many numbers are in your bank account. And so like make a list, like write down all the places you're rich.
I think we're already experiencing that just in our the three of us being together. I'm already experiencing so many forms of abundance, and one, just learning what that feels like through an experienced, felt way of having that, being like, hey, you guys good? Like, yeah, we're good. How do we feel about this? Like, can we let it be free? And that's how I feel like we've created this huge amount of space around it, where so many different energies can flow. And then when we come into a bump, it's like, okay, let's sit and look at that. And then we observe it for each other. Energetically. But then that immediately shifts in my life as well. And then it's creating this new precedent for how I'm approaching, like, creating a breathwork business, and how I'm approaching like my relationships. And so I'm already being paid and being fed in this relationship, even just through like understanding what it can be like to speak vulnerably and authentically with two people that I love, and it not be like super like, it's personal because I love you, but also it's not so personal in that I can say some stuff like I know I've done this with Pam a lot because we've been doing a lot of energy work. Or like the other time, like she's like, I'm mad at you, right? Or like, I'm annoyed, right? And it's understanding that when we say something like that, it's expressing an energy that is there. And so instead of being like, well, fuck you,
it's like, oh, I'm so curious. Why are you mad at me? Tell me
like,
more.
Actually, right? Or like, I want to make out with you. I'm like, okay, tell me about.
Tell me more.
And being able to get curious with those energies is so liberating, and it brings so much joy to like a spiritual heart that I think that again, we're already experiencing that, and continuing to feed into that, continuing to nourish that through each other, with each other. I can only imagine all the ways it will go, and I already have deep peace around however this manifests or shows or evolves, whether it becomes a cool thing that I did with a couple of my friends for a year or so, or whether it turns into, something different. There's deep peace around that, and it's a really beautiful feeling to feel that around something that you consider maybe a business, right? Or maybe, again, open to all possibilities, but it's such a different way to approaching it than how I was previously, approach the idea of a business, which felt so much like you must, and control, and like ego and failure and judgment and all these sort of things. And I encourage anyone to try to like experience what that can feel like. I think I was talking to Pam, I know we're close to time, but I said, sometimes I forget we have a podcast because it's so easy. Like, I don't forget it because I love it, but it's like, it doesn't take up space in the way that like trying to build a farm business, or trying to do like work around trauma and learn about that, or be a nurse, or like all those other things have taken so much energy. And this is just like, I cherish this. Yeah,
I do too. It's really appeased the generator in me, where I can do something else in the theme of what I love, which is spirituality and heart-centered work, but it doesn't feel like a job. It's like, because I have a whole career in JOB, and the healing arts, and sometimes it can still sometimes feel like a job. And this just like gives me appeasement in this space, but it's not a job. It's easy, like you said. It's just time spent and something different. So thank you, girls.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. Abundance in a different way. Look at this.
Yeah.
Abundance in like unconditional love. It's like, this is what's feeding me here. It's, it's so good.
I love that.
Amazing.
Thanks, Robin, for being you too. Part of the journey.
Like always.
All right.
All right. It's episode 9. The 3 fates.
Oh, so I know Pam's looking at me because we're going to put a new closure on this, like full disclosure. I know I'm supposed to say something with trust, but I forget.
Just 2 words.
Is it give trust? No, be trust?
Should we say the backstory first?
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me the backstory because I'm like,
Dee's
it's not-
panicking.
it's
She's
not-
panicking.
I panicked about 5 minutes ago. I was like, fuck, I have to say this like end thing and I don't remember.
What is the catchphrase?
All I know is that I'm supposed to say something with trust, but I like don't know. Yeah, we need Robin to hold up.
Yeah,
What
no,
is
no.
my end line,
Cue cards,
Robin?
cue cards.
2 words.
2 words.
She's panicking.
It's a sieve over here. I got trust, and if I just say trust, is that enough? I don't even know.
Who are you going to trust?
Who are you gonna
Myself?
trust? Ghostbusters.
Oh, trust myself. Trust yourself. Oh, okay. Yep. She gave it to me. Trust yourself. Okay. Trust yourself.
Be yourself. Be yourself.
And the rest will follow.
And most importantly, love yourself. It's been another
Okay.
episode of the 3 fates.
Yeah. It's been
It will be so much better.
We're
next
keeping
time.
it real. We'll get it right next time.
We'll tell you why we're
Trust
saying this
yourself.
later. Wait till next episode. Maybe we'll tell you why we're saying this stuff.
I'm going to trust myself that I'm going to remember to say trust yourself.
Trust yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already working.
Yeah, cool. Trust yourself. Be yourself.
Love yourself.
Love yourself. Y'all.
Have a great week.
Bye.